Hey guys, welcome to another podcast. Who Are We podcast. Today I've got special guest Carrie Hickman. How are you today, Carrie?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks very much for joining us. Just before we get started, let's do a quick disclaimer. We're recording this episode, this session, and we're going to put it on YouTube and put some links on LinkedIn or whatever else, just to promote it a little bit. But basically, all we're trying to do is get to know who Carrie Hickman is. So we'll get straight into it. Who is Carrie Hickman, and what do you stand for?
Yeah, so Trevor, thanks so much for having me on. It's very exciting. I'm going to start with what I stand for, actually, and then go from there into who I am, because I think what I stand for very much creates who I am as a person. So just to say, I kind of had quite a long and a difficult mental wellness journey for myself. And I'll go more into that when I talk about who I am. But what I stand for really is about making mental wellness accessible for every single person. Not just financially accessible, but cognitively accessible, time accessible, distance, location accessible. Because for me, mental wellness is far more than just the absence of mental illness. It is actually a holistic thing, and basically saying, are you thriving in life? And if you're not thriving, why? And how can we move you from simply surviving into thriving? Because I know from my own experience that there are plenty of people just like me who spend years and years and years going from day to day. They have little joys and little pockets of pleasure, sunshine moments, but they're surviving. You know, they're kind of financially, relationally, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, we're surviving. It feels like we are in the ocean with tiny little armbands. You know, they're keeping us afloat. We're not drowning, but we're not swimming the marathon mile, you know. So that's very much what I stand for. And I've actually built a business. I've worked in many different fields, but when I was retrenched 2 years ago, I decided to go at it myself and kind of take my passion and my story and my experience. And I built a business around creating resources and strategies for people to develop their own mental wellness. And that's kind of what I've been doing, because it is such an important thing for me.
That's amazing, and congratulations for making that move and working on such a humble sort of adventure. But it's quite needed in this, especially post COVID. I feel here in Australia we had we're still working through a lot of issues, I suppose, on that mental wellness space. Is it similar? Is it similar over there where you are in Cape Town? Is it?
Yeah. I think the whole world was kind of hit. COVID was a communal traumatic event. It affected, I don't think there was a single person who was unaffected by COVID in some way, whether it was the isolation, whether it was the loss of people, loss of jobs, loss of relationships, because a lot of people got divorced after having to spend so much time. I don't know. I know that not everybody in the world had lockdown. Here in South Africa, we had a very stringent lockdown. You were not allowed out of your house unless you were doing shopping for food. They actually blocked all the shops that weren't selling essentials, were closed. Even in our grocery stores, the toy aisles and the stationery aisles were taped off. You couldn't buy those things. You could literally only buy groceries, and the only people allowed driving around were essential workers. So it was quite a stringent lockdown. And then when it dropped down a level, we were allowed to exercise between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. in the morning. So, you know, here in South Africa, lockdown took away the ability to connect with people. You couldn't go to work. You couldn't see your family. It took away a lot of wellness things like exercising outside. And I think about, for me, I was on a second story flat, that I lived in. So I had no garden. No, I had a like a 0.5 meter out balcony that didn't get that much sun. So I think it definitely affected, if we look at mental wellness, a lot of tools and strategies that make mental wellness possible were removed.
Yeah.
And so it's not surprising that people's wellness deteriorated.
Yeah.
And a lot of people got into habits of not going out, not socializing. And so even after all the restrictions were lifted, a lot of people got very paranoid and scared about germs. They wouldn't see people. If you sneezed wrong, people stepped away. So there was stigma built around just having the flu. So it's not surprising at all. And if we look at the mental health profession, I've chatted with a couple of psychologists and therapists and things like that, and every single person is booked full. Like, you cannot get in anywhere.
And that's I think you're right. I think that's a pretty typical experience, and I'm very blessed. I got 10 acres here, so even if I was locked down, I was fine. But I think at the time or during it, I did have some contracts, and I was considered essential work because I had some mental health contracts at one of the hospitals here. So although wearing that mask around all day, it just really was really triggering for me. I just couldn't, because there was literally a line in the sand, and if you're on this side of the line, you had to wear a mask, and if you're on the other side, you weren't. So I was the only one at that Pacific hospital that come from the other side of the line. So it was just literally me, and it just felt really bad. So, but I think you're right. I think generally overall, and I'm happy to work with you on that. That COVID had a big impact on people's mental wellness and social connection, like you say, and even connection to nature and walking. A lot of them issues, like you say, are coping mechanisms for a lot of people, and they were gone, like literally gone, like that. And so you felt that you could help in that space. Is that at 20? Because that was just at the end of COVID. Is that when you started your business?
Yeah, pretty soon afterwards. So let me explain a little bit. Let me tell you a little bit about who I am, and then you'll understand why this is such an important thing for me. So I grew up in a home. My parents are amazing, but they were very young, and they come from homes, there's just so much generational trauma. So I had these parents who were basically still kids themselves, had no idea how to parent. And now you add that onto just the general kind of idea that parents mess their kids up no matter how good they are as parents. It's just a foregone thing because there's no manual, no one teaches you, and it's different in every home. And so they came across with their trauma and their kind of upbringing. And then being very young, and they talk about how our brains only really efficiently form by the time we're 25 to be able to cognitively make wise decisions and that. And so growing up was quite difficult. It was very traumatic in some senses. How my parents dealt with certain things was not the best. It left lasting impressions on me. And I'm very grateful and very blessed that my parents and I have rebuilt our relationships, and I absolutely love spending time with them. So I grew up in that kind of environment where there was a lot of expectations in performance, in you have to be this way, don't let us down in front of other people, those kind of things. And I took on board all of that messaging, as well as my parents being so young, going straight into a marriage out of school. There was a lot of fighting and stuff that they should have worked on independently. But that time, mental wellness wasn't a thing. Like, you didn't go see a counselor to deal with your issues. You didn't go for relationship or couples counseling. And so there was a lot of fighting in my home growing up. And so I learned how to survive in that area. And unfortunately, what happens is when we come from dysfunction, we learn unhealthy ways to survive, but they are, as kids, they're the only way that we have available to us. But what happens is, as you grow into an adult, you keep those survival mechanisms, even though they no longer serve you as an adult. And that's what kind of happened for me, is I learned that if I could kind of take, say, right, if I do this, then it calms the conflict a bit. And I kind of took all of that. And so I learned how to be anybody for anyone.
Yep.
And so I really lost, who are you? I lost who I was, or I never developed who I was into teenage and young adulthood. And so my 20s and a good portion of my 30s was really about learning who I was, because I started smoking at the age of 13. I started drinking at the age of 13. I then got into drugs. And a lot of it was about, I don't like who I am. I'm not good enough as a person. So if I use drugs or I drink alcohol, I can be anybody I want.
Yeah.
And I don't feel awkward in social situations. And by the time I was 25, I actually had a massive breakdown, completely suicidal, and I landed up in a psychiatric hospital for 3 weeks. And that was where my journey started. I got clean, stopped using, stopped drinking, and kind of started doing some counseling. And it was the start of my journey, but I didn't really, there was a benefit for me to stay sick. It was kind of like a middle finger back at my parents. There was a payoff. And it was only about 2 years later that I was like, no, this is not the life I want to live. And so I got down and serious. I was still clean. I've been clean now of drugs and alcohol for over 17 years. So I never went back on that. And it's been a difficult journey. But it was only when I was about 27, 28 that I was like, actually, I've got to change something here. And that is a huge reality to face within yourself. And so I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. I don't know if you know anything about borderline personality disorder. It's the hated diagnosis. Nobody wants to work with you. You're completely a brat and all of that. And I had the most amazing therapist who worked with me through it and didn't let me push them away. And when I was diagnosed with bipolar on top of that, I, instead of taking those labels as this is a disadvantage to me, I took those labels for what labels are. Labels inform us of what something is. It's information. And so I went into the DSM-5, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which actually gives you the diagnoses for mental health. And I went and said, okay, well, what are the symptoms, the criteria of borderline? And I started dealing with those things individually with my counselor. So one of the big things is a real or imagined fear of abandonment. And I was like, absolutely, I'm terrified of people leaving, and I have been since I was a kid, because we moved a lot. And so I never formed lasting relationships. And so I said, okay, how do I do this? How do I identify that abandonment issue is real in me? I can start to learn some self-awareness about how I act to avoid it. And then I can start working on what can I change? What skills can I learn? What strategies can I put into place? And so I just started doing that with all the kind of things, with addiction, with my bipolar, with my borderline. And so started a long journey into that. And as I got better and as I learned techniques, I'm very blessed with a mind that thinks quite laterally. It understands the big picture and it can simplify it. And so I started getting really creative with implementing, because a lot of counselors will tell you, well, go home and practice breathing. That's going to help calm you down. I'm like, but I breathe all day, every day. What's the difference? And so I really started developing this idea of, well, the counselor is telling you to fix your window. I'm not only going to work with you to fix your window and show you the steps, I'm even going to take you to the hardware store to pick the right hammer and the right pattern. And so kind of coming into this niche in the market that I haven't seen exist anywhere. It's kind of between the counseling aspect, which is looking at the past, and the coaching aspect, which looks at the future and kind of coming in right here, right now. And I was doing that for myself, and realized over time that actually other people listen to my experience and take on the way that I am looking after my mental wellness, and this idea of a maintenance or management program. And I started volunteering my time at rehab centers and that. And then so when I was retrenched, it felt very natural to build on this idea into a business. So mental wellness is very, very close to my heart. It's been my own journey, my own experience. And I'm not just sharing theory. I'm sharing something that I'm passionate about. And the problem comes in, I'm so passionate about it, I forget to charge people. And so my business is in the ground.
And that's, I suppose that's a tough one. And firstly, thank you, Carrie, for being real and sharing your story. And that's very commendable of you, because obviously some of these issues, you're not showing in the brightest light, and drug and alcohol addictions is real for a lot of people, and a lot of these things, and a lot of there is a lot of trauma out there, and I acknowledge that. And I think it's fair in saying that, even from World War II and people dying and getting pulled away from different wars or different things, and trauma's everywhere, and here in Australia and probably there too, there's like a native title, trauma, and native tribal stuff, and then the conflict between, different cultures and different people, and there's trauma everywhere. And the fact that alcohol and drugs is used to self-medicate for that is quite prominent, I would suggest, and it's quite happens everywhere, and to be able to get through that and get to the other side of that, especially with some diagnosis that you're talking about, and that's very commendable on you, and I'd like to thank you for sharing all that. It's very good. So I'm hearing that using your own lived experience and living through what could be say once in 100-year event, isn't it? COVID, I think last time it was 100 years ago, so I think it's fair to say 100-year event, which is quite extreme and quite draining on a lot of us, like you said, with the social media, and just trying to develop the strategies that you required to sustain mental wellness. You're developing programs to help others in a business after you're retrenched. So you mentioned before, though, and this is quite interesting because this is very important, and I've been doing it now for about 5 years, and this is something that I'm really passionate about as well. It's not enough to live, I think your exact words were, but we need to be aiming to thrive. Not just living is not enough. Getting through day to day is not enough. I think we need to thrive. I think your exact words were. So did you want to talk about that a little bit? That's quite intriguing.
Yeah. Sure. So the kind of idea came from my own lived experience again, in that it wasn't enough to just take medication for my mental illnesses or see a therapist. There's actually a third aspect to living well, which is our daily routines and maintenance in looking after ourselves. And that is far more, I think people divide it into this kind of physical wellness and emotional wellness. But actually, if we look at our, I drew the concept from energy levels, strangely enough. If we look at the various types of energy that we expend in life, it's mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. And if we are not replenishing all of those energy buckets, they start siphoning off the energy from each other. And so you can be physically tired even though you've done nothing physical. Or you can be emotionally drained even though you've done nothing that is actually emotional, but you've been mentally engaged without replenishing that bucket. And so the concept for me came about going, well, it's not just our energy levels. It's not just about keeping those topped up. It's actually about how do we develop a system within our day-to-day living that is automatically topping those up without having to think about it. And so the way I kind of work, the best way that I can explain it, and this is what I use in a lot of talks and with clients and things like that, is to think about a car. Okay, everybody can relate to a car. Everybody knows what a car looks like. They know how a car works. You know that you have to pump the tires with air. You know that there has to be a certain depth in the tread. You know that you have to fill your car with gas or diesel for it to move forward. You know that you need to keep your windscreens and your windows clean so you can see where you're going. You know you have to take it for a service. You know you have to do. So even if you don't own a car, you understand the basics of how a car works. So let's take that. Let's say we are our own vehicle. Okay. And if we want our vehicle to be looked after and to run properly without breaking down, we have to apply the same mindset as looking after a car. If you don't clean your car regularly, it's going to start to rust. If you don't change the oil, you're going to damage that car. And the less you look after the car, the quicker the car will deteriorate. So let's take that into our actual mental wellness. So let's we start with the tires. What is the actual function of the tires? They connect the car to the ground. Okay. And they keep you moving forward. So let's take that concept, connection. How are we connecting to ourselves? How are we connecting to, so we look at the 4 wheels. One wheel is our connection to ourselves. One wheel is our connection to a higher being or higher power, spiritual kind of thing. One is a connection to the world around us in terms of nature, what is happening, all of that. And one is connection to people. So we've got our 4 tires, and we've got to look at how are we connecting to those 4 aspects. And that is the tread on the tire, the air pressure in the tire. Are we continuously looking after it? So that's the one side of maintenance and wellness. Then we look at filling up with gas. Okay, your car's not, now that your tires are all sorted, your car's not going to move forward without gas. So how do you fill up your energy levels? What is your gas? Because gas is fuel and energy is fuel. So how do we fill up our energy? What are the things we do? For example, for me, when I spend time with my nephews, the whole world disappears, all my problems and stress disappear, and I am completely in the moment with my nephew, any one of my nephews. Okay, so what are you filling your vehicle up with?
Well, for me personally, I suppose it's always good to spend some time with my partner. I suppose that's probably a cough out a little bit, but even the animals and my partner, and I like trying to do things that I want to do is probably something that helps, because obviously, you do things for money, you do things for this, and you do things as, for favors, or you do this to help that person. But for me, doing things that I want to do, and often to do that, I've got to do 20,000 other things first to get me into that stage to be able to spend that 5 minutes. So,
that brings in a concept of values and all of that. And I encourage anyone listening to this to go look at John DeMartini's Values and Voids Determination. It's phenomenal. But so how are you replenishing energy? So I'm an introvert. I know it doesn't sound like it because I just speak freely, but I'm actually an introvert. I get very drained dealing with people, even if I love them. And so if I have an event or a party or a talk that I'm doing, I make sure that I build time around that is me time, whether it's being creative or just resting and watching a movie. And so it's understanding how you fill your various energy cups. So that's the fuel part, okay? Then you get to the next thing we need to look at in the car is looking at, well, we've got to keep our windows clean. So what are you using to keep your mind clean? So, and this very much comes down to, what are you watching on YouTube and TV? What are you reading? What are you engaging with in your mind? If we are doom scrolling to smut, our mind's going to be filled with smut. And so the idea of keeping the windscreen clean in the car is the same idea as how are we keeping our minds clean, aligned with our values and what we want to achieve out of life. If I'm doom scrolling all the time with random things that, even if they're not bad things, but they're not edifying,
Yeah.
then my mind is not going to be clear. I'm not going to be well. I'm not going to thrive mentally. So are you doing things that upskill you, that raise your curiosity? Like, do you take time to play and be open-minded? So that's the idea of the windscreen, and keeping the windscreen mind is keeping your mind clean. And then the next two parts is obviously you need to do water and oil checks regularly. So these are things like, what are the external things that you need to put in? Do you do counseling every week? Do you make sure that you take your medication? Do you have a date night with your partner? What are the things that you don't have to do every day, or every week, but you need to be doing them semi-regularly, like every 2 to 3 months. Okay, you check your oil and your water. And so, and part of that is actually just going, let me step back and do a little bit of reflection and self-awareness. Spend some time journaling. How have I been? What have I been loving? What have I been hating? What have I been liking? What am I accepting? Am I pushing myself to do what other people want me to do rather than what I want to do? So that oil and water check is very much your kind of your not so regular things that you've got to do to check in and reflect. And all of that. Do I need to change my oil? Do I need to top up with water? And then, of course, the last part is kind of doing the service, which you do once a year or every 3,000 kilometers, whatever it is. And that is looking at checking in with your doctor for a full wellness check, checking in with your psychiatrist if you need a psychiatrist. So that's that, you know, that rare once a year kind of thing that we're doing. Are you doing a full wellness check? Are you checking your bloods? Are you checking your heart rate? Are you doing those things? To make sure, like, is all your medication aligned properly, or are you actually experiencing side effects that are not helpful? And so I really believe that looking at this in this kind of holistic approach, in an analogy that is so relatable for people and easy to follow, is the mental wellness maintenance plan.
Wow,
you know,
that sounds exciting. That's really good. And I really like how you've got the different, especially the 4-wheel connection. That's really good. Connection to self, spiritual world, and nature, and people. Yeah, that's all very well. And like you say, taking the time to self-reflect on what's working. It sounds like boundaries and setting boundaries is quite important. I suppose that's part of that, isn't it? And that sounds like that sounds wonderful. And a connection, because a lot of people, when they're talking about overall wellness, sort of associate diet, they associate physical exercise. You've mentioned outdoor activities and that sort of stuff, and the connection to the world and nature. So all them sort of facets are intertwined. Is that something that you're acknowledging and something that you're encouraging as well?
Yeah, so it's still in the development stage, but I'm developing a 12-month course. And the idea behind it is there are 12 concepts that I have. After I had a huge reflection myself in December. I had some spare time, and I just took the time to reflect on a lot of things, because I felt like last year there was a bit of a catalyst, and all these things that I've been maintaining for myself, they kind of came together and everything just locked into place. And the last 3 months for me have been absolutely phenomenal. No matter what financial stress has been battering me and physical health issues, and that I kind of I feel like I'm thriving. And I really sat down and said, why? What is different? What has happened? And what I realized is that we can teach people to fish. Sorry, we can fish for people. But when we leave, they're going to be hungry. Okay. And it's the same with mental wealth. We can teach people skills. We can say, go do breathing, go do mindfulness, go have a distraction technique. But if they don't have the right mindset to be able to do that by themselves, it's useless even trying to teach it to them. Okay. How many people have been told skills, have been shown skills, worksheets, And the minute they move away from that therapist, or like, okay, I've got it. One, they don't practice it every day, so it's not ready when there's a crisis. Or two, they simply don't have the mindset to want to do it. So my, I call it, it's the Foundations for Thriving course. And there are 12 concepts that I have kind of looked at and go, if we can master these 12 concepts, we will develop a growth mindset that not only allows you to use these skills and strategies daily, but actually you don't even need to be taught them, because you will discover them on your own because you have the mindset, that growth mindset. And it covers things like mindfulness, acceptance, reality, like being realistic. I suck at singing. If somebody tells me you're a horrible singer, I don't need to take that. I don't need to be offended by that. It's the truth.
That's right. You can just accept that. Optimism.
And that's what's there.
Yeah, optimism, is that one of the ones as well? You sort of
no, because optimism and positivity can be quite toxic. We do not live in a world where everything is positive.
Okay.
There are horrible things that happen in our world, and if we try and slant everything positively, we're not being authentic. So authentism is one of them. Vulnerability, mastery, just the simple thing of finishing a task. How that impacts you. It doesn't have to, you don't have to be an expert in something, just mastery. Boundaries, learning how to say no, communicate. So
and that's tough. That's tough, isn't it? That's a real big one. I think that's something that I struggle with a lot. When someone asks me to do something, you just say, that's how these marketers do it, isn't it? They learn on that.
But you've got to look at the reasoning behind that. Why can't you say no? Why is your needs less than that person's needs? And if you do that for everyone and you don't look after yourself, well, you're going to burn out. And then you're going to be useless to everyone. And so it's not just learning the boundary, it's learning the concept behind putting yourself first. That it's okay to say, look, I really hear that you're struggling, but I do not have the finances or the capability or the time, whatever it is. I don't have the resources to do this for you without taking it from somewhere else. And my mom taught me a beautiful lesson growing up. I've never forgotten it. I apply it to everything in my life. Do not give or lend or do something for someone unless you are willing to write it off. So you have to, whenever you do things for people, whether it's lending money, going to help them fix something in their house, looking after their kid, whatever it is, you are giving a resource away. And unless you are happy to write that resource off and never get anything in return, don't give it. So if we look at all of those things, it comes down to two things. Do I have it? Do I want to give it? And if you can't say yes to both of those, then the answer should be no. And this includes money, because when you lend people money, you build resentments. When you do things expecting that someone is going to give it back to you at some point, you are going to build resentments, and that's not good for your wellness. So it's adopting these mindsets of how we approach life. If you can learn acceptance and what you have control over, well, the guy that cuts in front of you, he's not really going to bother you because you don't have control over it.
All over that, So understanding your circle of influence sounds like that's a big part of it. That's amazing. That's pretty cool. So so you talk about obviously developing these over many years, and you talk about being retrenched now and moving into this business. But I also heard a few times now that probably finances or funding, I suppose, in regards to these programs has been probably one of your biggest barriers, is it, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, and I mean, I've been fighting this, it's probably almost 2 years now. I'm kind of just pushing through because I believe this is needed so badly. The problem is people don't know that they need it yet. And so I've spent that time developing things. The other part of it is I am just very bad at marketing myself. Like I would rather go and sit and create something or talk to a person one-on-one. I don't have the motivation to pick up the phone and say, hi, can I get an appointment with you? So part of my learning curve in the business was going, well, stop trying to do it yourself. Find someone. And so a lot of my things that I do and that I've managed to, because I had no startup capital, I had no savings, I had nothing. I literally went from retrenchment to what do I do now? And I was a curse and a blessing at the same time. My gran, who I've loved my whole life, that I'm very close to, she passed away a year and a bit ago. So that was the curse. I lost her, which was devastating. But the blessing out of that was I got a little bit of an inheritance, which helped me sustain me for a couple of months longer. And I know that that's how she would have wanted me to use the money. She believed in my business wholeheartedly, you know. So, and then I've also just done, people forget that trading is not just money. Okay. So I have a bunch of skills. I've worked, I'm a lifelong learner. I've studied theology. I've studied psychology. I've studied marketing, sales, graphic design, hospitality. like I just keep learning, and I keep doing new diplomas and degrees and all of that. And so I just actually started approaching people and saying, well, I need a little bit of copywriting done. Do you want to come to I know you want to come to one of my workshops. Instead of paying for it, can we skill trade? And so I started building up some skill trade things with people to get my printing done, to get my website set up in the background so that I can go in and build it. But a lot of the stuff I've done myself. I've designed my own logo. I've designed all my own website, all my own brochures, my business card. I've done all of that myself because I am blessed with those skills as well. But I'm reaching a point now where I've spent the time building resources, building programs, workshops, things like that. But now I need to get it out there because I'm not paying the bills. You know, my home is in arrears. I'm always wondering when I'm going to get food. I got to phone my mom and say, Mom, can you get me, can you buy me some cleaning products for the home? And that's stressful because my parents are always going to be my parents and they worry about me. So that's where I'm going now. And I thought of one of the ways that I'd like to do that is I'm just busy kind of touching up my new website, is I actually want to put a donation option in, not for me, not to donate money to me, but to donate the resources that I have to underprivileged places. So I have like I have an adult coloring in book. I have a mental wellness activity book. I've got a grief workbook for kids. So people that have money but don't necessarily need it because they are doing mentally well and they believe in it, they can say, look, I want to donate 50 books to that public hospital or whatever it is. Because I don't want people to give money to me. I want to earn the money that I make. But this is a way that people can give to other people, but it's a sale for me.
It's that's right, service, And that was one of the biggest challenges that I had as well, is transitioning full time into this sort of role. And I've been very blessed, and it's probably obviously a big difference between South Africa and Australia with that sort of stuff. But I've been pretty blessed in the fact that I've been supported since I was 19 by my partner, and my kids are growing up now, so I don't have to worry about the kids anymore. Although the youngest, he's 21, still lives here. I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. So, but trying to commercialize a lot of these things is quite a challenge, and it sounds like you're up for it, and you're doing all the right things. So obviously we can give you a plug. We can give you a plug on no problems at all. So we'll do that and get some plugging going on the links on LinkedIn. But in relation to and it's been great talking to you and sharing your vision and all the wonderful things you do. I am about trying to support people and try and help out as best I can. And I suppose that's part of this. I suppose, you're not the first one that's got a business. A lot of other people, I suppose, is probably a little bit more developed than you, but there's been probably half of the people on here are plugging plugging businesses, which is fine. It's okay, because it's literally, like you say, a free resource of mental health and just understanding, because just acknowledge, or just even understanding that, yeah, like you say, you need help, or you need to do this stuff, or just to have a light turn on. Hang on a minute, maybe that could benefit me, and if I looked at that and get some people looking at it, so so we can do all that. But yeah, in relation to trying to come up with strategies to create residual income with your resources that you've got, I suppose, do you envisage doing Zoom calls similar to this call, and talking to things? So what, touching base once a week or something? Is that how you're seeing it work, or is it?
So I can do, so when I do one-to-one sessions, so basically I've divided, my business is I share, I guide, I share, I guide, I teach. Okay. So I share by doing talks. So for example, I'm on an app called October Health. And anybody, you can go in, you can see if it's on. We mostly in America and South Africa at the moment, but it is basically an app which is free for individuals, and businesses can buy a program, but it's got sessions, 14 to 15 sessions a day, obviously South African time, that are just about different things. So I'm one of the hosts on there.
Oh, really?
I go, and if anybody wants to go look up October Health in your app store, you sign up, it's completely free. You join into the forest, you can listen to as many sessions that you want. There's no ads or anything. It's completely free for the individual.
Wow. Right.
So I do a lot of talks on there. I probably, most days of the week, I am running a session on something. And it's all mental wellness and mental health around. So I share. I do talks for companies, and I can do those online, in person, or any of that worries. I guide by having individual sessions with people, and that is the walking next to you. I'm not I mean, I am a qualified counselor, but I'm not doing counseling. I'm saying, right, you come to me, you give me where you're getting stuck. Where are the areas that you are surviving, and I'm going to help you build the thriving. Then I teach is by the workshops and that I run. So I've got one online workshop at the moment. It's 6 weeks, an hour a day. And I'd love to get, like, if I could get, and my aunt and uncle and cousins are actually in Australia. They're in Perth.
Are they really? Yeah.
Yeah. And so I need to get a chance to chat to her, because I want her to market, because if I can get 10 Australians, I don't mind being up at 4 a.m. my time to run a group every week, once a week with 10 people. So the idea is I can do what I do anywhere in the world.
And that's the beauty about it, isn't it? It's just trying to get that awareness, that marketing and that sort of stuff there. So, and that's something that, and that's something that I hope that perhaps a little bit of awareness, and we can help you out with that sort of stuff. And that sounds amazing. And I like a lot of what you said. It sounds like, and like you say, like 20, you're talking about 27 to now. Like it's a lot of experience and a lot of lived experience and history associated with that. And I'm one as well. Like I got another saying. It's not really thrive, but I know that a lot of the women programs here in Australia talk about thriving a lot. But I promote just being the best version of yourself. Like whatever that looks like, and just just continuous improvement, isn't it? Just never being satisfied.
You are you. That is truer than true. There is no one in the world who is more you than you.
That's cool.
And that's authenticity. And I think, we chatted before we came on, but authenticity is a really big thing. Okay. We spend, John DeMartini says, for so much of our life, we live by the values that the world places on us. And then we wonder why we feel like we're failing at life. Well, it's because we haven't unlocked our own potentials by reflecting on what is of value to us. And I think that is really where the more authentic you can become, the more confident, the more self-assured you unlock, when you can start to accept your flaws, because authenticity is acceptance at the end of the day. It's acceptance plus vulnerability. It's
Yeah.
accepting that this is who I am, and then
Yeah.
being vulnerable enough to share that who I am with other people.
Yeah.
But when you can do that, oh my gosh, the freedom and the liberation, because you stop worrying about what other people think.
Yeah.
You take the criticism and you
Yeah.
look at it objectively. You take the praise and you look at it objectively. And I mean, it always comes back. One of my favorite poems is that poem by Riyad Kippur, what's his name? Rupert Kippard or something. And he writes in the one sentence, when I can accept the loss of something plus the praise of something and take neither on. Also, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it's that exact thing. When I can have praise and have criticism and neither of them affect my confidence or my esteem, up or down, then we know that we have reached a point where we are okay with ourselves. And really, you can't do that if you're not practicing mental wellness, because you will never learn to accept yourself.
Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because, like you said, we had a bit of a chat off air and what other people thinks and perceptions and what the world thinks. And I got lucky, I suppose, because I started my journey when I turned 40. That was a catalyst for me, just my 40th birthday, I suppose. And the fact that I wasn't dead yet, I suppose, surprised me. But and it's just amazing when you look at that, and you're 100% right. Boundaries, that they were a big problem for me, and you couldn't say no, and that's because you have no self-esteem, I suppose. You're not putting yourself first, or you're putting other people first, and it's quite interesting. And the more you work through these things and have these conversations and pick up these tools to put in your belt, then it's amazing how much relevance you find in a lot of these things with with the world. And no, it's great. So well, thank you very much for sharing
thank you for having me on.
Have you got any final messages before we go, or have you got anything?
So I'll leave you with my life quote. I got this quote when I was 28. Somebody gave it to me when I was in a psychiatric clinic. They wrote it on the board for me, and I lived my life by it.
Yeah.
So the quote is, the greatest service that you can render the world is your own self-actualization.
Yeah.
So if I want to serve the world, I need to learn who I am. And the more I grow, the greater I can serve the world. So if you want to make a difference in the world, learn about yourself.
Yeah, that's amazing, and that's a good message. Yeah, okay, no worries. We'll leave it there, and what we'll do is we'll tag in some of these things, and we can get all your links to your websites and everything. We'll chuck it online and that, and try and do a bit of a plug on that sort of stuff. And we should keep in touch and touch base a bit.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit of an entrepreneur, and I've been self-employed now since I was friggin' 20 because I can't get a job, so I have to be a little bit crazy with crazy money making schemes. So keep in touch, and it's very similar to the work that I do by the sounds of it, and bouncing ideas off people and talking to people and that, or if you want someone to practice some training or something, or run some ideas by, I'm quite happy to help. I'm here to help whenever. So just reach out and keep in touch. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
No worries. See ya. Bye.
Right.